Hi.
Hi, sir.
Okay. So let's talk about your paper, and I already opened it. So here is the paper, and let me save it again in case I make some more changes to it. Um, yeah, the main issue, of course, was that the the paper needed to use and cite specific information from at least three different chapters, right? Three different chapters from chapters 1 through 12 of the Trompenaars and Hampton Turner textbook, or chapters 1 and 2 of the Cresswell and Paw textbook. So I went through your paper, of course, and I indicated where you could find information on the exact pages where you could find specific information that you could use and reference in your paper to support and develop and refine to support the points you make. I mean, did you I mean, you understand that what the instructions want you to do? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you revise the paper, you want to make sure that, of course, you can remove all of this, but you want to make sure that you keep under the within the word limit, which I say is what, 500 words, not including these words and any citations, not including that. So so I see you decided to write the paper like you're writing out a speech or a brochure or a website that you're creating for international students coming to Catholic University of Korea. And so you say, welcome to CUK, those of you who are courageously come. Yeah, so I keep in mind, this is more of a public relations statement or public policy advice. It's not really scholarly academic writing, so it's not like writing the paragraphs, right? And that's okay. I mean, I want people to have a little fun in this class, so it's fun to think about how you would advise American students or Chinese students or Cambodian students coming to study at Catholic University of Korea. So you write, welcome to CUK. Those of you who have courageously come to study abroad deserve respect. There will be difficulties in adapting to a new life and new culture, but I hope you can overcome it. Well, there's a lot of collaborative work in universities, and it can be very difficult to do this with students from different cultures. To overcome these difficulties, I would like to give you some tips that you remember. Okay, so and then, again, make sure I want you to explain, and you can do something like this. If you're going to say, well, this notion of respect, if this is you could do something like this. You want to keep this text. I told you when the word count in terms of the amount of words that you can have, that does not include any kind of words in footnotes and citations. So you can go here, you can put a mark here, and you go to insert footnote, insert, and then down here you can put the information from the textbook and give the page number that in your explanation as to why you have this statement or this sentence or this information in your speech, right? So maybe not there, but if you go further down, it says here, first of all, don't think all others will exclude personal feelings to achieve public purposes. When you have a personal conflict with someone, you should not expect them to exclude emotions to achieve one purpose in their public space with you. A clean separation of public and private affairs can be something you can only expect within a limited culture you lived in. Okay, that's a good point. The Korean culture you're claiming is diffuse, right? So, somebody is a student with you. You're supposed to that they can expect that somebody is going to. You really expect them to be close, rather than specific in terms of the entire life being connected. Yeah, so I write here, Trompenaars and Hampton Tour discuss specific versus diffuse cultures, like on page 95 in chapter 7. So use that information here to indicate that Korea is more diffuse than specific, like American culture is. Of course, Trompenaars also make the point that Europe is the most culturally diverse part of the world, and Southern European cultures tend to be more diffuse than specific. So, you know, it depends on the kind of student who you're advising, because you might have an American student be reading your statement, but it could be an Italian student, or it could be a student that comes from a diffuse culture like Italian culture. And so they're going to react differently to Koreans than, say, an American. And that might be something that you need to figure out. How do you say in your 500-word brochure or your 500-word speech, right? So
Yeah.
you might say something along the line of, you can put that page, that information here. You can put this in the footnote. You can go like this. The footnote like that, and you go insert, put it down here. You know, you can clean that up, fix that up a bit, explain that that's where it comes from. But how are you going to phrase that explanation? You might say something like this in your brochure, because you're not going to put all this information in your brochure. This is just for me, right?
Yeah.
But you say something like, Koreans are, when they make friends, they expect, or when Koreans make friends, they assume that somebody really wants to be friends in many ways. Well, or they want to be friends in both as a student and as a roommate. Something to indicate that somebody better be prepared for that. That if you're an American and you are, it takes you a while to get to know somebody. Like Americans, it's difficult for Americans. I think Trompenaars and Hampton trying to make that point. Americans have many acquaintances, but not many friends. Like it's really hard for Americans to get close to people. He makes that point. They view people specifically. So you're my student friend, you're my drinking friend, but you know, this notion that somehow somebody who becomes your friend becomes a friend in everything is something that Americans, it's really hard for Americans to deal with that. Sometimes they get scared, particularly if they're college students, you know, who are away from home, they're away from their families. You can't just go home because it's far away. We have the pandemic as well. So, I mean, I keep hearing stories about international students feeling homesick. Like somebody just told me today, her roommate seems to be really homesick. In other words, she's not having an easy time right now in Korean culture. So you have to tell me, you have to phrase the explanation in a way that an American or a German or an Italian or a Brazilian, how they're going to need to understand that Koreans, when they make friends, they do it quickly, and they do it. They expect a friend to act like a friend really quickly, compared to Americans. Or, you know,
Okay.
and you know, it took me a while to realize that. I mean, you know, I'm kind of a introverted person. You know, I'm kind of a distant person. So when I first got here, Koreans would come up to me, for example, like there's examples. Like Koreans would come up to me. Before maybe you started here, you remember we used to have a cafeteria on the first floor, the place where people could eat food. I would be sitting, I would like to eat by myself. I would get my food and I would sit down and just eat by myself. And Koreans would come up and sit down with me. And I wasn't used to that. But Koreans, you know, think that, well, you know, we're all here in the Catholic University of Korea. You're part of our Catholic University of Korea. We're all together, so we're all together. And so I'm just going to sit here with you, and I'm going to be part of Catholic University of Korea with you. I don't know how American students would respond to that. That, you know, you're sitting down, you go to the cafeteria, you sit down, and you want to like be separate, be alone, just to be relaxed. And then a Korean you don't know comes up and sits down right in front of you and starts eating with you.
Okay.
Maybe Italians, they like that. Maybe, I don't know, but I know me. I was like, I don't know you. Even if I'm lonely, I don't know how to respond to that. So that's just an example. But so you have to put that in there about specific versus diffuse cultures, that, you know, we're all part of Catholic University of Korea, so people expect you to be fully supportive of each other, you know, and not have too many, do not have artificial barriers the way Americans put up barriers, because they focus upon people specifically. You're this, you're that, you're that, you're this, you're that, you're that. We're not close buddies. Like Americans have, you know, maybe just a few friends in their entire life, close friends. They have lots of acquaintances. I can count on one hand the number of really close friends I've had in my life, my adult life. One's dead. One's angry with me. I mean, they're not many, aside from my family. So people in other cultures may not think that emotion will confuse the issue. And even if they do, they may try to ruin the issue by prioritizing emotional achievement over the solution of the issue. Therefore, you should be careful not to cause problems even in private places. It won't be easy, but stay as neutral as possible. Yeah, Americans tend to be judgmental, right? Because they think that there are rules, and they tend to be mechanistic and universalist, right? Whereas I get a sense that Koreans are more hesitant to, are more unlikely to make judgments about other people. And I got that in Bulgaria as well. Like that, I mean, Bulgarians and maybe Bulgarians and Koreans in a way are more tolerant. I mean, like, for example, when I was at the American University in Bulgaria, you know, it's a poor country going through tremendous changes, and a lot of people drink too much, like many places. And there was a drunk guy who was the photographer for the university. His name was Toma. And like, he would come, so, and the students at the university, you know, in this university town where the university was located, had lots of nice cafes. You know, it was a beautiful place, beautiful weather in the spring and the summer and the fall. And you could sit outside, and the students would be sitting outside, talking, smoking, drinking, and Toma the drunk would show up, and they would interact with him. They would talk to him, even though it was clear this guy's an alcoholic. He's sick. There's a problem. But it wasn't like he was dangerous, but they knew he was an alcoholic. But Americans would go, oh, get away from me. Oh, I want to talk to you. But the Bulgarians, they knew he was alcoholic, but they wouldn't expel him from the group. I mean, they didn't like him, but at the same time, they would tolerate him. So, and I don't know how Koreans respond to that. You know, like you got somebody who's got problems, you know, and it might be different between the Koreans and non-Koreans. I mean, I was at a Paris baguette store in downtown Seoul a few years back, and I was sitting there on a Sunday, and there were some Korean girls having, you know, coffee, and a young Korean woman came in who was mentally, you could tell she had some kind of I don't know, speech impediment, maybe some kind of autism. And she sat down with the Korean girls, and they talked to her for a while, but eventually they went away, the two Korean girls, because they didn't really, you know, and that's difficult for anybody, right? That's difficult when somebody comes in. You don't want to hurt their feelings, but at the same time, you don't want to be bothered, you know. But I was always struck by how it just seems Bulgarians were more tolerant of people, whereas Americans are more mechanistic and universalistic and therefore judgmental. And maybe we're all judgmental, but the Americans will, you know, they'll get away from somebody like that. They don't want to be around them. They don't want to run away. So don't think, you go on here, don't think the culture generally in your own country will be the same in other countries. This is a different country. The relationship, the lifestyle you've taken for granted may not be the case here. Yeah, again, might want to get to the point because that's extra words. The same is true in any field such as relationship, time, activity, etc. In order to maintain a gentle relationship, let's be careful if my cultural differences cause any inconvenience. For example, in the dormitory community, complaints about international students from certain countries who make loud noise and eat at night are constantly received. These cultures may be universal in their cultures, but not in Korea. So is that like a communitarian or a universalistic notion that somehow, you know, we all know you're not supposed to cook and make noise at night.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe Americans and other cultures are they're more particularist, right? Like that might be one way what you're emphasizing about how, you know, there are rules that maybe Koreans, they know in terms of community, or maybe it's more communitarian notions, right? That you know, you don't do whatever you just want to do. You do what you think first about what's it going to be the impact on people around you. And I know what you mean. I also say, yeah, South Korea may also be a more communitarian society versus a more individualistic society in chapter 5 of the Trump beginning on page 63. So the instructor, so I pointed out, you know, at least 3 or 4 different places where you could find specific information in more than 3 different chapters that you could use to explain and justify the information you're going to have in your web page or brochure.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess another point that came out with, for example, like we talked about in class today, not all international students, but it just seems to me that international students, because they're adults, they're no longer children, so they're allowed to do what they want to do, and they take responsibility. So there seems to be, and of course, like I mentioned, some students, they may already have problems before they come to Korea, but then those problems, since they're away from home, they get worse. So like some students might have a drinking problem, and then they come here and it gets worse. And I've seen that happen a number of times here and elsewhere. And you know, and that is also, you know, magnified in part by the fact that, you know, I think Korea has a strong drinking culture, at least before the pandemic. So that might be an issue in terms of giving some kind of advice in the paper about if you have a need, if you have a question, or you need, how to phrase it in a way that, not say like you need help, but if you have any questions about or request for advice, that might be one way to phrase it. If you have requests for advice, who would they contact at the Catholic University of Korea? Like, does the international office have a place where students can go to ask for help, like counseling, or if they got a conflict with somebody, like where can they go if they got a conflict? If the student has a problem with some other student, where do the students go to complain or to ask for help? Do you know?
Such number?
Well, I mean, what office? I mean, I don't know, like Korean students, I mean, if Korean students have a problem with another student, where do the Korean students go? Can they go to some place for help?
office of our international studies. Yeah.
What about, what if there
helping
is some
students.
kind of a social conflict? What if they're worried about another student? What if another student looks like they're kind of having mental problems?
I saw the mental care office in the building Maria, or yeah,
There is those
yeah,
kinds of places?
yeah, there are
Uh-huh.
mental care office or helping for students.
Because this has become more of a problem everywhere with the pandemic. Supposedly the
Yeah.
mental health of people is becoming more under challenge, under stress.
Yeah.
And I know maybe things are starting to get better, but still, you know, I mean, also the fact that you might want to put in your brochure that reference to that office. What about the Catholic Church? Do the Catholic Church, the church people here at the university offer some kind of help for people? Like do they encourage people, students, to come talk to the priest or the sisters if there's a problem?
I think it's not easy because of the language difference. The Korean priests or churchmen cannot speak French or English, so I think they cannot give help to them.
Oh yeah, you have to, somebody can speak the foreign language. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw, you know, just in my time here, I saw unusual things that sometimes, like that I had one Chinese student who was here, and he had mental health problems. And then he started taking my classes, even though I failed him, and we took my class, and he was, and I didn't know, I didn't know what to do other than go to, what did I do? I told the chairperson of my department, and the chairperson did something. But it wasn't just the Chinese student. I've had at least 2 Korean students, no, 3 Korean students that had some kind of mental health problem. And the mental health problem was causing 4 students, that was bad enough that I tried to tell somebody, because I didn't know what was going to happen with these students. I just told the department chairperson yelled at him, but there was something wrong with him. And there was another student who he was smart, but there was, again, something wrong with him. His English was excellent. And then I tried to complain to somebody, and nobody would let me. When I tried to talk to people in English, nobody would allow me to give the name of the student to them. Like they had some kind of confidentiality requirement. The only thing I could do is recommend to the student that the student go get some help. But the student was harassing me.
Yeah.
And then I saw that student in the hallway later, and it was the same student, and I could tell that student was on some kind of medication. So somehow somebody approached that student, and that student was put on some kind of psychotic medication. I don't know if it helped them. They looked weird. Like this medication, I don't know if the medication was helping them. And the thing is, like, this student had a girlfriend, and the girlfriend was supporting him. It was really, and this was all in English. Remember, I don't really speak Korean.
Yeah.
This was several years ago. This is a long time ago. And then I had a girl student. I could tell there was something. She didn't harass me. I could tell there was something wrong with her. And the only thing I could do was, we put some comments about the students in a database, and I don't know what happened to her. I was worried about her. There was something wrong. And then there was another boy who was a problem, but I think he graduated. And then there was, of course, a story several years ago. This was again, some student killed themselves. They jumped out of a window, a girl.
Oh.
Well, it happens, I mean, it happens everywhere. It doesn't just happen here. It happens in the US. I mean, I've had students I'm trying to remember when I was in the US teaching. I can't remember. It's difficult for me to remember. I've had students, but not that serious. And I don't know if it was partly because the pressure is much higher here in Korea. Because these students could all speak English. It's an issue, like the students have to be, there should be a place where a student can go for if they need advice. That's how you phrase it. Because particularly they themselves, well, they should know if they're drinking so much that they're getting in trouble, that they might hurt themselves. But it happens. I mean, I've seen it happen. And like I talked about in class, I mean, the most high profile examples produce scandals, like with Amanda Knox and those two American students who killed an Italian policeman in Rome last year, and the murder of, I mean, people they come to a foreign country and sometimes they think they can do these things because they're away from home, and they can just leave it. They can experiment even in the most dangerous, bad ways, and just leave it there in Korea or in Bulgaria or in Italy. And then, of course, you have and then these students, people are lonely, and sometimes, particularly young people, they're trying to find they want a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and then we had two cases. I remember while I was here, there was a Filipino student was studying here on scholarship and for a master's degree. And for the scholarship and this program that was organized with the Filipino and Korean governments, the students had to live in the residence hall, and so that the Korean students could improve their English by talking to that student, living with that student. And one of these Filipino students, he was trans, or this student was trans. So the student started wearing women's clothes. And then the Korean students told their parents, and the Korean parents complained to the university. And then the university had to figure out what to do, because the Korean parents were angry, but they didn't want to offend the Filipino government. So they ended up allowing the student to continue and study on the scholarship, but they didn't allow the student to continue to live in the dormitory. But that made the Filipino government very unhappy. And the Filipino government wouldn't cooperate with the university for a while after that.
Yeah.
And then there was an Australian boy, this is also several years ago. He came here and studying from Australia. He was a white Australian guy, and he was gay, and he was looking for a boyfriend, and he approached some Korean guy, and the Korean guy didn't understand what this boy wanted. And when this Australian boy, when the Korean boy student said no or rejected him, the Australian boy got really, really angry and threatened him because he was embarrassed and humiliated. Now, I know there's not everything that the university can't fix or prepare for all problems, but there should be a place where the students can go for advice. And, and that might be the way to phrase it. If you need advice, contact the CUK International Office.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any questions?
Do you think that should I have to change the format of brochure or maintain?
I mean,
this
you want
format?
to we stay under the 500 word plus or minus 10% word limit. So you have to revise how you want to, you revise the essay as you think you should, but make sure that you say exactly what you want to say without wasting any words, because you have that strict word limit, okay?
Okay.
So,
And yeah,
okay. Anything else?
no, okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. I don't know if I made any more changes here. I'll send you the, I'll send you the link to the YouTube recording, okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay,
Very
bye.
helpful.